This is a true story. I'm laying on my balcony, just sprawled out, having a great time. And I'm like, hey, how does somebody know, or what should they do to know if they're ready for retirement? Like, what steps could you take there? And I just got out my phone, started making notes. That's what we're going to cover today, right?
All right. Yeah. And then also afterwards, we've got at the end of this show, we're going to try something new. We've got a question. So from a listener. So if you have something maybe that you want us to talk about and look at, what we're going to do is at the end of the podcast, we're going to try something new and go through a question as well. So if you want to see what that is in a little bit, stay tuned.
Okay. I love it. And who should they email, or what should they do?
We'll just put it in the comment section.
Put it in the comment section.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's see where this goes. Just put some random stuff in the comments and see if we answer it.
You know what's going to happen here.
They're still telling what we're going to get.
All right. So from a planning perspective, right? Oh, camera's over there. So my first thought is we've got to solve for years 1 through 3. The most emotional part that I see, I can't relate, I'm not there, but the most emotional part that I see is people that go from bringing in money, working and getting a paycheck or whatever, to now having to pull out money. And if we could just solve for years 1 through 3, like what that looks like, where every dollar's coming from, and make sure everything's in there, boy, that helps with the emotional side, you know?
Yeah, and when you say the emotional side, it's interesting to see the people that are pretty aggressive in pre-retirement years, and then going into retirement, they're still like, hey, you know what? I've got enough money. I feel I'm confident and I'm comfortable. But boy, as soon as the retirement hits, it's like the switch is flipped there.
Yeah.
And something just changes, not for every single person, but there are so many that are just like, you know, I think you're right. Like maybe we do scale back a little bit in the plan. Can we? Can we afford to? We talk about that a lot, you know, really trying to stress test that a bit.
I have a grown man, like a man's man, who retired. He's moving out of the country, actually. And I think he had like 1.6 million or so. We come up with this years 1 through 3. We hit the first month of year 1, and the market was down in that month, and he withdrew money. And he's got plenty of money. We've worked it all out, but he became a little bit of a child there for a second. Yeah, I get it.
When the market has volatility, that's when you're going to find that.
Oh, yeah.
And then you got to think through just your withdrawal strategy. We talk about this a lot, but where are the dollars first coming from? If you're retiring at age 50, well, guess what? You can't do the rule of 55 where you're pulling it from a 401k or anything like that. Maybe you have, you know, a brokerage account, a bridge account. Somebody recently just reached out, and we're working on 72T. They got a cool strategy there that we're going to be doing. And that one is so technical. I think I'm actually going to do a video next week on that because it's just so technical. It's not for everybody, but 72T is basically the idea that you were able to pull money out of your IRA account without the 10% early withdrawal penalty. But it's very systematic. You have to do it, you know, steadily in a certain amount of money every single year up until age 59 and a half or 5 years, whichever is later. So, or the ladder. Is that what they call it?
Ladder.
The ladder.
Well, the other part for me on this one is like the withdrawal strategy doesn't seem very interesting, but it's where someone can add a lot of value. So if I could show you that if you just withdraw your money this way, you'll end up with whatever. But if you let me tinker with it and you withdraw this way, you end up with 4 or 5% more. Well, that's a return. It's just now you're retired. So the return is how much more money you have, not how much growth you got. So that one really sticks out to me. And then that gets us into, which would kind of be like step 3, right? Tax planning. Like, let's figure out the tax strategy the rest of your life so that we have a guest.
Yeah, our dog's coming in.
Hey, Pop. So let's figure out the tax strategy so that as we make the decisions of conversions and stuff, that, it makes sense, right? We're saving money. And it's really interesting right now because of the Trump tax credits kind of expiring.
Sunset 2025.
But, you know, they're not going to just sunset. Like, that's it. We'll have a new president, or we are going to have a new president. Yeah. And one way or another, they're going to put their little stamp on it. So it's like, okay, those things change over time. Tax planning and strategy is huge for total growth or return for the rest of your retirement life.
Yeah, I actually just saw an article talking about that. And even, you know, you've got, Trump, obviously, that's the tax credit that he did under office. So let's see if he extends that. But then the other side is, Kamala's now saying, hey, you know, that's kind of the hurricane that's out there that we know about. And so it's interesting to see that it hasn't been addressed yet completely, but both parties know that it's going to end. So what are they going to do? How are they going to fix this or, you know, make the adjustments there?
Also, it depends on...
Curious to see what happens.
Do we have a split Congress? Is it a sweep across the board? I mean, I don't know, but
Yep.
There will be changes. So we want to work through that.
Your investment adjustments for your cash flow. So trying to follow on where you're going with that one, because that's one that I was like, oh, wait, I haven't talked to you about that. But I mean, I would think, you know, just adjusting your investments in general, and correct me if I'm wrong on what you're thinking here on your process, but but what we're looking at is what you're needing. And so then, again, it kind of goes back to year 1 through 3 cash flows. So adjusting your dollars there to make sure that, maybe you don't have the ultra risky stuff out there, your really aggressive portfolio that is going to be what you're needing in the short term for your cash flows. Vice versa, you can have something that's a little bit longer. Was that your thought there? What were you thinking on that one?
Yes. However, every advisor stops there. I've watched all these videos and stuff. So everybody goes, we got to solve for years 1 through 3 and make sure your investments aren't too risky. Okay, that's a given. We got to do that. But what about the rest of the years? Like, let's go through and say, well, why would we do years 4 through 10 a certain way, but years 10 plus a different way? So now we're going to go back to the stats of saying, well, 0.9 times a year, we have a 5% pullback in the market. So let's just say 1 time a year on average. Once every 3 years, you get a 10% pullback. I think we've done a little bit more than that lately, but over the long term, since 1929, that's what you get. Okay, cool. Let's keep going with that and go, how often do we get a 20% pullback or greater? And then say, well, since we have 4 through 10 years for that, let's call it a bucket, that next bucket. Well, we know we can step it up a little bit, but we're not going to necessarily just bet it all on Apple or be aggressive. Well, think about it through the rest of your life. Let's make that later money still aggressive and still growing and everything, instead of going, well, 60-40 stocks and bonds, I got to do it. Not for the whole piece of your account there. So that's what I meant by that.
So you've got that, but also what people aren't realizing is with the Monte Carlo analysis, it's a lot more conservative of a look at your retirement. So when you're looking at like a probability of success, when we're talking through nest egg, we've got the Monte Carlo, which runs 1,000 scenarios. Well, with that itself, it's taking into consideration that and the volatility in the market. So it's saying, hey, here's your portfolio, here's the volatility in the market. Sure, there's certain scenarios that may not play out per se, but overall they're looking at the median line with that to figure that out. So if you're looking and you're saying, oh, well, I'm in a 60-40 portfolio with all of my accounts across here, there might be the opportunity there where, you can pull from the 40% bonds if the market's down, you can pull from, the 60% if the market's up. You've just really got to come up with what works for you. 2022 was kind of a hit in the head for a lot of people because the bond market fell so much, though the stock market fell as well. So it correlated when it's not supposed to, or it went together when it's not supposed to. So a lot of people got burned there. They're looking at things in a different way now. Though I think that, they used to say the 60-40 was dead. I think it's going to come back. That's my thought, because now we have interest rates a bit higher. They're going to lower the rates again. So bonds are going to become more attractive and a bit more stable, even if the market falls apart. That's my
bonds
take there.
Historically are more volatile during rate changes. So we had a series of lowering rates, and then it was flat for a while. And now we're going back into, or we had rates go back up. But now maybe we're going to cut rates a little bit. So you notice that bond market at one point there was a 6-month stretch where the bond market was actually more volatile than the stock market. It's not supposed to happen, but it does. Retirement. So we got a whole bunch of stuff actually, but one that kills me, and it's not perfect, right? This doesn't work for everybody, but your conversions early in life. So from your 401k, let's assume you're going to move it to an IRA and then convert it to a Roth. All right, well, even if it's just a few $1,000s or whatever, it's like those little efficiencies add up. And in the early retirement years, I actually tried this with somebody. It didn't work, but I tried it. Trying to draw a little bit from Roth ahead of time so that we could get those conversions in and stay under the 12% bracket, make them look a little poor. It didn't work, but it was like, hey, wait a minute. I'm not going to just tell this person, do this, and then not try something else. So that didn't work, but early retirement conversions, a lot of times that adds up because you're not touching those dollars until later, which what we just talked about. You're going to invest those dollars more aggressively because you're not going to hit that money for 10 years. Okay.
It's going to allow it to compound and grow, but also it's going to step into another one that you'll have here in a minute. But you have the ability potentially to convert before you have to worry about Social Security tax, before you have to worry about Medicare, IRMA penalties. And so there's a lot of things that are going to come into play there where the conversions earlier potentially make the most sense for you.
Also, think about it. If you convert, and let's just say we get you up to the 12% bracket for whatever reason, you're right there, and you convert some money, your effective tax rate on that may be 8%, especially with the double standard deduction.
Yeah.
So now, okay, it was 8% to move some of that money. Well, if it's invested aggressively, we have a good year and you're back to even. Now we've got, 10 more years after that. So it's got to be a thought.
Nope. And so another one is really just accounting for, random expenses, random goals, travel, the things that you not just what you have to have, but also start to build in what you want to do. Because everybody works so hard in life and, figures out, okay, well, this is how much I need to live and retire. But you haven't really thought about, oh, wait, our kids moved and we're going to want to travel to see, the grandkids that are being born and all of these different things. Or maybe you want, the big vacations over to, international travel, Europe, all of those things. Start building those into the plan as well. And that's something that we can always scale back on. It's not a necessity, but you worked your whole life to get to a point where it's like, I want to be able to do. So factor that in and really think through that.
Pet peeve of mine here.
Pet peeve.
I'll be a little grumpy for a second.
Know your expenses.
Yes, when we go into nest egg, our clients, we do a whole planning thing. When we go in there, we call it nest egg. In the goals section, people only put their retirement goal. Well, if you're staying in your house, first thing I do is I look, are you going to sell your house? No, we're going to stay. Okay, you're 59 years old. You're going to replace your roof. You're going to have major expenses. We don't need to itemize everything, but we've got to put something in there that says every 4 or 5 years, ding me for $20,000. And it'll average out if you don't spend it. But the one guy getting his seawall redone, you know how much that costs?
Those are outrageous.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah.
So
my neighbor's about to get one, and it's, I think he said 150 on his.
It is, that's
crazy.
You're close. So that concept, we know things come up. It could be travel and all the basic stuff we talk about, but it's also that the things that you spend money on that don't account for that month-to-month retirement expenses. That's all.
Yep.
Okay, just a couple more here. Social Security, Medicare tax plan, you just alluded to it a second ago. Be mindful of how we take money out, and let's get ahead of that, especially if you're retiring early. A lot of people are retiring early, 58, 59 and stuff. Well, okay, let's get ahead of what could be in the future. Otherwise, you might be a little frustrated. You mean I got to pay tax on that?
Yeah. There's a penalty if you hit 65 and you have too high of income for Medicare. So you're going to actually have to pay more in Medicare. Social Security could be potentially taxed even higher depending on what your income is. Also, something with Social Security and the planning side of it too, though, is starting to see more people like, you know what? I'd rather not touch my dollars. I want to take the Social Security. And so we look at that with planning and really trying to factor that in. How much of a difference is it? And again, it kind of goes to the psychological factor where if it's going to be, $50,000 to $100,000 at the end of the life, 40 years from now, you're like, or 30, 40 years from now, what's $50,000 to $100,000? That's money. Don't get me wrong. But their idea is like, I would rather just have this steady flow of income coming in, and it's a psychological play. And, we are going to give you the facts on the investment side, but we also want to make sure that we don't drive you crazy or push you to have a heart attack and you die early. We want to make sure that we're accounting for things properly there.
I agree,
Dog's just running around.
He's having a great time today, man.
Then we've got legacy planning for extra dough. This is a really interesting one because as we're speaking of this, there is potential tax proposals being done on right this second. I don't know if you saw. So it may not affect those unless you have like 5 million if you're a single individual, or 10 million. This was the Biden plan on the step-up basis. Step-up basis potentially going away on inherited stocks. So really you've got to get to thinking through on the finalized part of your plan is like, what is this for? If you're a single person and it's like, hey, you know what, my last check to bounce, good for you. But if you're not, you have kids, you want to think through something, or you definitely want to develop something to go to a charity, whether it be, tax strategy that comes into this legacy plan for today for you, or it just be tax strategy for your heirs. We really want to dive into that and think through that.
That just like grind your gears, man. Like that's the nicest way I can say that. Why are we constantly looking to change tax laws to bring in more revenue for the government so that they can spend it on things that we all are like, what? You guys just lost money? You gave this away or whatever? Oh man, that kills me. But it is a thing, and that is being talked about. It's like the being taxed on unrealized capital gains. What? Why? They're talking about that because they're like, we got to raise money.
I don't see how it's going to play out. That's
garbage.
As much as I do math in my head and understand the basics of math and unrealized gains and
That's
realized
a nightmare.
Gains, that one doesn't even make sense to me because it's only if you make 100 million or more. But if you make over 100 million or have over 100 million in assets and you have, let's just say 10 million in unrealized gains, totally fine. But Elon Musk is a perfect example of this. And I'm like, you could argue it whatever way you want. Oh, he's, one of the richest people in the world, take the money. But Tesla is one of the most volatile stocks out there at a lot of times.
Yeah.
So one day he may have, 100 million in unrealized gains. The next day he may only have 10 million.
Yeah.
I'm stretching that. I'm not giving you the facts on those numbers, but I'm just giving you the examples of how that works.
Yeah.
So at the end of the year, I've got 100 million in unrealized gains. Boom, you're taxing me on it. But then the next year, I'm like, wait, I lost all that you just taxed me on. What does that?
How does that
How
work?
does that? It
The
doesn't
whole-
make sense.
The concept of like them.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Doesn't-
No, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't sound good at all. 'Cause they're-
Well, no, but it sounds good to the people out there. Like, well, yeah, make them pay their fair
That's
share.
how they pitch it.
That
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Every tax law starts as an emotional argument, and at the end of the day, it's like, hey, wait a minute. No, I don't. I don't care. I don't want to pay more tax. Who wants to pay more tax? If you earned it, like, great, pay whatever tax you got to pay. But why are we changing the rules? And I got off on a tangent there.
Well, I guess I got a question for us here, but then real quick, just to kind of break this up just a little bit. Do you remember the chiropractic joke that I told you? It was about a week back.
Okay.
Come on, dude. That was good. Like, because I
was
play on
funny.
things. Say, all right, if you're listening, let me know. Let me know what you think. All right, so we got this right here. Let's talk about this. This is going to be a fun one to talk through because everybody has their opinion on this, and it's a good breakdown. So person's 45 years old. They're recently married. The husband has $40,000 student loan debt and no retirement saved, but the wife has a mortgage that she came into the marriage with and $500,000 saved for retirement.
Ooh.
The question is, combine finances or let the husband handle it and she do hers?
He must be a hell of a guy. I mean, she's doing it right. Yeah, and then she thought, oh,
I'll let you, if you want to start on this, because I mean, I've got some almost like real strong views on
they got married?
This was a yeah, they're married.
Okay, so they're married now. He's got the debt. Well, the debt is now yours, right? Or, that's what's going to happen there. So obviously there's no turning back. But she's not saying like, should I leave the guy or anything?
No. It's just, do they combine finances and be like, hey, we're going to work this together, or are we keeping everything separate and him just kind of keep doing his thing and I'm keeping doing my thing? Obviously, one seems to be based on what we've got of this, seems to be a little bit more financially responsible than the other, or potentially he's just not a high income earner and maybe she is. I don't know that side of it, but I'm just looking at that.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him a bad guy just because of that. Maybe maybe he did something for another family that he had to do, or you never know.
Yep.
So combining finances to me is always obvious. Like you just do it, right? I have a friend, Joe. They keep their finances separate for their whole life, and they say you pay for this, and I pay for this. You pay for that.
Yeah.
But they're both very responsible, and no bills go unpaid, and they just do it that way. It's weird to me, but
yeah, it's unique. I know there's a lot of people listening, and there's a lot of people who are on a second marriage who do that because you've got, well, I'm keeping stuff for my kids and my beneficiaries, and I eat all of that. There's some different things there, but based on this scenario and what I've got, the first thing is I'm just going to tell you, you kind of messed up here. This should have already been a conversation prior to getting married. Finance should be a topic that gets discussed because, I mean, if you actually look statistically, a lot of marriages end because of and divorce because of finances, arguments on finances. You got to be on the same page, whether it be, that, you just kind of meet in the middle or you discuss, hey, keeping it separate. Personally, I'm with you on this completely. You should be combining finances. I'm looking at this and saying, let me go back to a call that I had recently with somebody, and the husband was a higher income earner than the spouse. And they kept everything separate as well, to the point of almost like she didn't have as much money coming in on a regular basis. And, just kind of getting personal and sharing the situation that we're in, I'm in a fortunate position right this second, and my wife as well, where she's not working right now. I'm not giving my wife a budget and saying,
oh, I don't like
hey, okay, I'm going to give you, this much. Now, thank God my wife is financially responsible, always has been. She actually loves thrift stores, loves them, dude. And she'll show up and be like, I spent $20. Look at what I got.
Nothing wrong with a good thrift store now.
But I really would just want to stress, because I talked to these people and I was looking at their scenario here, and it's basically the wife's living on much less than the husband. And man, two become one. If that's the way you look at it, that's the way I look at it. It's just, there has to be something here where you're working together on it. And in this scenario, you're having the conversation, and if they're not financially responsible, you're going to have to really work through this together. If you're not if they are financially responsible and it's just maybe they haven't made the money, then you guys work together, get rid of the debt together. As long as you're planning life together, then hopefully he can start saving more for retirement eventually, get the debts wiped out, and now you both now have a mortgage, not just you, and you're able to work through that.
I would actually very quickly leave any relationship if that person felt or wanted to say, let's keep it separate, but you give me an allowance of some kind.
Yeah.
No, we're not kids.
And
This is not it.
let's even go a little more personal on this. And I think you can share probably the same scenario. So at one point, I made more than my wife. And then at another point, as I stepped in the financial industry, I actually was making pennies.
Yeah.
So I was trying to grow a business and be an entrepreneur and grow something and do something. At that moment, she then was the breadwinner of the house. And while she was the breadwinner of the house, she didn't tell me, hey, I'm making more now. Here's how it's going to be.
Yeah. Well, not that. Yeah.
You've got to work through this. And because you were in the same scenario. There were
we went back and
where,
forth. Yeah. I stayed home with the kid too and made sure she turned out okay. But it was like, if she would have said, here's an allowance, or if the roles were reversed and she were asking, I'm not telling, but if she was asking, would you give me an allowance? I'd be like, no, you're not a kid. I don't like that idea at all. Just be smart about it and let's talk through things. We used to use a red light, green light.
Yeah.
We would just quickly in conversation, if people were around, we would say, red light, like we're not spending excess money. And then it was like, she would want to do something and I'm like, green light, it was like a way of saying, I get it about how much that costs. Have you looked at the bank? I looked at the bank. Yeah, we're good to go. Go ahead. And then we came up with like yellow light and like purple. It was weird, but it was a way we communicated without sitting down and going, here's the budget and this is what's going on. I like doing that.
I'm the worst though with when it comes to the finance side of, and I think it's guys in general. I've talked to a lot of people and kind of realized this more and more. My wife doesn't do all the fancy stuff. Like I say, she likes the thrift stores. So she'll spend a couple bucks here and there. I mean, maybe, 150, 200 bucks a month just on, like toys and some clothes. Nothing crazy, but just a little bit of money. On the other side of that though, I don't care. Like, here's our shirts, we see what we wear. Thing. We're pretty simple when it comes to that. But when I do want something, I go get something. And I messed up one time and I went and I bought a CJ5 Jeep. I think it was the 1975.
Oh, no. You bought a car without telling her?
No. So she went with me. We had to drive over to get it.
Okay.
And I talked to the guy and I actually went and I think I had a couple $1,000s to put down on it in my pocket, but didn't have all of it. And so I went and I said, hey, I want to go look at this Jeep. I may want to get this Jeep. So she goes over there with me. And I mean, it was like an hour and a half drive. Or no, I had all the cash. That's what it was. I did have all the cash. And so we went on an hour and a half drive to go buy this Jeep. And while going to buy the Jeep, I guess her mindset was not that we were just going to look, not we were going to buy. I guess I didn't express myself enough that, hey, I've got cash in the pocket. I'm going to buy this Jeep as long as it's good. I'm not driving an hour and a half for nothing. So I come out and she's like, all right, you ready to head home? And I'm like, yeah. So I just need to, everything looks good. And so you're just going to follow me? And she's like, huh?
Oh, no.
Thank God it was an hour and a half ride home in the
She
Jeep
had time
by myself.
to think about it. Yeah.
Just let her cool down a little. I was like, oh, shoot. So
we may have a certain employee around here whose family member went out undiscussed, bought a new car. Without it, like, hey, I just want a new car. I'm going to go get it. Didn't take time to do research or anything from the story I remember. Comes home with a new car, and this person's like, you want to tell me about this car? It was a massive argument.
Yeah.
That was a tough one.
I think that when you're doing the big purchases, kind of getting, even going back to this question a little bit, if you're married, you're combining finances, or even if you don't combine finances, I think there's still a sense of responsibility of saying, hey, things are separate. But if you're just going to buy that car, you should have that conversation. And maybe you have the conversation with your spouse. And if you make $100,000 combined a year, maybe it's, hey, if we spend over $500 a month or $1,000 or $500 one time or $1,000, if you make $1 million a year, maybe it's like, hey, if I spent 50 grand, you got to have some threshold, but it's having the conversations and just knowing that you've got to work on this together. But also I will go to this and say, you've done a great job of $500,000 saved for retirement. Be careful not to go too fast, too quick with your husband if he's not super financially responsible. Help him, guide him on things. Maybe talk with a planner or a third-party person that's going to come in and be able to help with this situation. But don't just take control, because that's where it gets dangerous too, of saying, you're not buying this, you're not doing this. Again, it goes back to almost like the allowance thing. Don't do that. I've seen that, and I saw that. I saw that actually was a good leading indicator that eventually the marriage didn't work. And that was a
Nobody
big
wants
part
that.
of it.
Yeah, that's not part of it.
Almost being treated as a kid, you know?
Yeah, that's,
So.
you joke about with the car thing with the person here. It's
Yeah.
like, if that would have happened, what?
It's funny. You know, the person here.
That, the guy over there. But if that would have happened to me, and I think about it now that I'm older because they were probably about that age when it happened. I honestly, I would be so frustrated with that. I would say, okay, cool. You keep the house, keep all the stuff, keep your new car. I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
It would have made me so mad. Like
I couldn't personally do that as much, but
I would have done it.
I would.
Especially being in finance, right? You're like,
Yeah.
I know the chaos you just caused. There's no chance you got a good deal. Like, and why wouldn't we talk about it? You want a new car? Let's just go do it. Ooh,
Yeah.
that way. It was. Well,
That
we'll
is
leave it
tough.
there.
well, yeah. So like I say, this is a new little format we're kind of talking about, just seeing where things go. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are, and if you have something maybe that you want us to look into, give us a bit of a detailed synopsis. Please don't put anything relating to you directly, so we can make sure that we keep it all anonymous. We're not giving financial advice. We're just wanting to discuss it with you and help you. We won't give investment advice, I guess I should say on that.
Well said.
Compliance.
My turn.
Check.
I got a joke.
Okay.
What do you call? Beautiful. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed Eric's joke and my joke today, and we'll see you soon. Adios.
Every time.